Think about the apostate-driven lies and dishonesties that Jehovah's organization is permissive toward pedophiles. I mean, that is ridiculous, isn't it? If anybody takes action against someone who would threaten our young ones and takes action to protect our young ones, it's Jehovah's organization. We reject outright such lies.
It is clear that over the decades, protecting children from abuse is a top priority for this organization. We are proud of our reputation in this regard.
Within the congregation, ours is a spiritual protection. When we're talking about physical protection, that's up to the secular authorities to provide.
So, the Watchtower organization is proud of the action they have taken to protect children against child abuse. But what they provide is described as spiritual protection. What is spiritual protection? Does it include notifying the authorities?
Do elders comply with secular laws about reporting an allegation of child abuse to the secular authorities? Yes. In places where such laws exist, elders endeavor to comply with secular laws about reporting allegations of abuse. Such laws do not conflict with God's law. So, when they learn of an allegation, elders immediately seek direction on how they can comply with laws about reporting it. When they learn that someone in the congregation is accused of child abuse, elders endeavor to comply with any secular laws about reporting the matter, and then they conduct a scriptural investigation. If the individual denies the accusation, the elders consider the testimony of witnesses. If at least two people, the one making the accusation and someone else who can verify this act or other acts of child abuse by the accused, establish the charge, a judicial committee is formed. The absence of a second witness does not mean that the one making the accusation is untruthful. Even if a charge of wrongdoing cannot be established by two witnesses, the elders recognize that a serious sin may have been committed, one that deeply hurt others. The elders provide ongoing support to any individuals who may have been hurt. In addition, the elders remain alert regarding the alleged abuser to protect the congregation from potential danger.
We want to make sure that children are cared for. So if the government does happen to make mandatory reporting, that will make this dilemma so much easier for us, because we all want the same goal, that children will be cared for properly.
Why does a Christian organization that takes seriously the protecting of children from sexual abuse need a law passed by secular governments in order for them to report a crime against a child to the authorities? How can such a policy possibly be something to be proud of? What scriptural principles could there be that would support it? Let's listen as Jeffrey Jackson explains.
Is there a scriptural basis to that policy being, or practice being, not to report child sexual abuse allegations to the authorities unless required by law to do so?
Thank you for the opportunity to explain this. I think very clearly Mr. Toole pointed out that if the Australian government and all the states was to make mandatory reporting, it would make it so much easier for us. But the ethical, or the let's say the spiritual dilemma that an elder has is to consider, how did he get the information that he has been told? Now, there's a scriptural principle in the book of Proverbs, chapter 25, and I'm not saying, Mr. Stewart, that any one of these principles takes precedent, but it is something that the elder would need to take into consideration. So Proverbs 25, verses 8 through 10. That's on page 905. That's Proverbs 25, 8 through 10. Do not rush into a legal dispute, for what you will do later. For what will you do later if your neighbor humiliates you? Plead your case with your neighbor, but do not reveal what you were told confidentially. so that the one listening will not put you to shame and you spread a bad report that cannot be recalled. Now, I'm not saying, Mr. Stewart, this is the only factor, but it is one factor that all ministers of religion have grappled with when it comes to an issue such as this. The second issue is that elders are told, as is mentioned in 1 Peter, and the 5th chapter, this is on page 1625, 1 Peter chapter 5, and verses 2 and 3. Have you got it, Mr. Stewart?
I do.
Yes. Shepherd the flock of God under your care, serving as overseers, not under compulsion, but willingly before God, not for love of dishonest gain, but eagerly, and then this is the point, not lording it over those who are God's inheritance, but becoming examples to the flock. The point being here, another aspect that an elder needs to consider is he does not have the authority to lord it over or take over control of a family arrangement where a person who, let's say it's a victim who is 24, 25 years of age, has a right to decide whether or not they will report that incident. They also respect the family arrangement that the appointed guardian, who is not the perpetrator, has a certain right to. So this is the spiritual dilemma that we have, because at the same time, we want to make sure that children are cared for. So if the government does happen to make mandatory reporting, that will make this dilemma so much easier for us, because we all want the same goal, that children will be cared for properly.
Let's take the situation in a family where one of the children, let's say the eldest, reports having been abused by her father.
Yes, sorry, is there a question?
Yes, if that report is accepted as having validity, you would accept that the potential is that the other children in the family remain at risk.
That is correct.
And by not reporting to the authorities, is the case not that the confidentiality of the one who reported is regarded as being more important than to protect those who are still at risk?
No, Mr. Stewart, if I could just, what I'm trying to highlight is there are several factors that make it hard for a minister of religion to make a clear-cut or quick decision on this matter. Obviously, I think, again, what has been highlighted to the Commission, the elders should encourage the guardian of the child or whoever is in that family arrangement that is not the perpetrator to notify the authorities.
Leaving aside the question of overriding mandatory law from the civil authorities, do you see the possibility within the Scriptures, as you've identified them, for a change in the practice of Jehovah's Witnesses? In other words, would it be within the Scriptures for the Jehovah's Witness organization to adopt a policy which says that in cases where there are others at risk, a report must be made to the authorities?
That is a possible thing for us to consider, and I think already the assumption is there that if any elder was to see that there was some definite risk, that their conscience should move them to do that. But the point I was trying to make, Mr. Stewart, is there are other scriptural factors that maybe make that a little complicated, and it would certainly be a lot easier if we had mandatory laws on that.
On September 26, 2018, a jury decided the Jehovah's Witnesses of Thompson Falls, Montana, as well as its national headquarters, the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, failed to protect one of its members from child sexual abuse. As a result, The victim was awarded $35 million. Sanders County District Judge James Manley ruled that the organization was negligent when it failed to report earlier abuses by Maximo Reyes against a girl in the congregation. The lawsuit claimed the local and national Jehovah's Witnesses organizations were negligent and violated a Montana law that requires them to report abuse to outside authorities. Elders in Thompson Falls did disfellowship Reyes from the congregation, but reinstated him about a year later, in June 2005. After being reinstated, Alexis Nunez, then an 8-year-old girl, was assaulted sexually by him, on a near-weekly basis for the next 2 years. The Thompson Falls Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses, along with the church's highest offices, the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of New York, and the Christian Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses, appealed to Montana's Supreme Court, claiming that an exception in the law, that stated members of the clergy are exempt, was denied them, and the decision was reversed. On January 8, 2020, a unanimous decision from 7 Montana State Supreme Court justices found that religious authorities are not always obligated to report child sexual abuse to authorities, due to an exemption in Montana state law. Jehovah's Witnesses in general were never made aware of this case. It did not appear on the Society's official website, nor was it printed in any of the Society's publications. Yet in its May 2019 study edition of the Watchtower, was printed the article, "Love and Justice in the Face of Wickedness," previously considered. In light of this, what do you think? Will lawyers for the Society be congratulating themselves for gaining such a victory? I sincerely hope not. I cannot imagine that the God of love and justice could possibly have bestowed his blessing so as to result in such an outcome. While the fact that the decisions rendered by these two courts differ considerably is a matter of deep concern that needs to be addressed, and most certainly will be in the future, one thing is for certain. Congregation elders do not seek to comply with secular authorities when they hear of allegations of child sexual abuse. Their first call is to the Society's legal department. They are then mandated to strictly comply with what that department instructs them to do. Thus, the entire paragraph in the May 2019 Watchtower should be read this way: do elders comply with secular laws about reporting an allegation of child abuse to the secular authorities? No. In places where such laws exist, elders endeavor to comply with what the branch says about reporting allegations of abuse. True, such laws do not conflict with God's law. But when they learn of an allegation, elders immediately seek direction from the branch on whether or not they should comply with laws about reporting it. The Society's legal department will then seek to find a loophole, or an exception, in order to avoid reporting. But why, if such laws do not conflict with God's law? The reason seems to be in order for the organization to avoid costly lawsuits, to protect its reputation, and preserve for the rank and file its image of being able to provide a spiritual paradise, under the guidance of God, by means of His Holy Spirit. But the real question is, does failure to report to the duly constituted authorities conflict with God's law?
Our second principle is based on Romans 13, verses 1 and 2. We must listen to the governmental superior authorities who are permitted by Jehovah to care for certain functions. The importance of listening to these authorities is emphasized in verse 2, where it says, "Whoever opposes the authority," or according to the footnote, "whoever resists the authority, has taken a stand against the arrangement of God." We know that these authorities exist by God's permission, and it's His will that Christians be subject to them as long as what they require doesn't conflict with His law. News reports are filled with stories of people ignoring the direction from the authorities or even protesting against it. But rebelling against secular authorities constitutes a rebellion against God.
If someone sins because he has heard a public call to testify, and he is a witness, or has seen or learned about it, and he does not report it, then he will answer for his error. While it is true that Jehovah's Witnesses are not permissive of pedophiles, the organization's system of protecting children is seriously flawed. In the previously mentioned case, Maximo Reyes was disfellowshipped, later reinstated, and yet went on to continue his abuse, for another 2 years. The congregation elders were unable to prevent this from happening. Yet the leaders of the organization cannot bring themselves to accept assistance from secular authorities by reporting. Rather, they would appeal to the state, and even the United States Supreme Court, in order to protect their right to handle such cases confidentially. Frankly, I find neither love nor justice in their approach.